You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and today, as we work our way through a very slow period during the NFL offseason, rookie mini camps are slowly beginning to start, but the vast majority starting to kick off around May 9th. We're going to start diving into some rankings, and beginning today with the AFC East, we are going to begin our offensive rankings. We're going to run through all 8 divisions, worst to first through the 4 teams of each and every single one, ranking them amongst their rivals, and then we'll flip to the defensive side. We'll hit the defensive side as well, and of course we'll cover news as things come out, but it's a slow time. We got to get creative about the discussion we're having here. So with that in mind, AFC East offensive rankings here. Fire away in that comment section down below where the Jets, the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Bills all stand as we get set for the 2025 season. But without further ado, we will begin diving in to the number 4 team, and after much consideration, I feel like this is one that could go either with who I have at number 4 or who I have at number 3, depending on what you like and dislike. But in my eyes, I think there's a little bit more uncertainty surrounding the New York Jets, so I decided to go with them at the number 4 spot here. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a roster that is pretty solid just to look at on paper here. There's nothing that really sticks out as far as like glaring issues, but I do think you have a really big question mark at quarterback. Of course, the regime change as well as far as the coaching staff goes. There's a lot of unknowns with this team, so it's hard for me to buy when I don't necessarily know what I'm going to get. You, of course, have Garrett Wilson on this roster. You have Breece Hall, so you have some talented skill guys to work with, and then you went in the draft, up the offensive line, drafting Armand Membu, and then of course in the second round going and getting yourself Mason Taylor as well. So you went and addressed a couple of areas of need. The tight end spot has not necessarily been very impressive in New York over the last few years, and then of course that O-line struggling this past season with 40 sacks allowed on the year. This is one of those things that it's just like I kind of need to see how it's going to look for me to really start to believe in it here. Justin Fields is obviously the big money addition here at the quarterback spot, 4-2 as a starter for Pittsburgh last season. The turnovers and just not even turnovers, but just the overall risking the football and putting it in harm's way. 4 fumbles according to the NFL's numbers. If you go to like Pro Football Reference, they have 6, so there seems to be a discrepancy there, but I went with the NFL's numbers. But regardless, he also had an interception as well, but it was his best season, I would say, as a passer overall in the limited opportunities that he got. Like I said, 4-2 as a starter, but also on top of that, he was en route to a career best near 66% completion percentage. So he had the second most rushing touchdowns of his career in a season at 5, and his career best was 8, so he was already more than halfway there. He looked really good. This was probably the best that we had seen Justin Fields overall through the very early portion that we've seen from his career to this point. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if everything comes together and Justin Fields can hook up with Garrett Wilson, and he ends up being the guy, and he's able to feed him. And we saw some numbers from Garrett Wilson drop off a bit last year, but there is a fair argument to be made that maybe it had to do with Aaron Rodgers just looking more so Devontae Adams' way and feeding his guy the football. You also went and you brought in Josh Reynolds this offseason as well, so a nice boost to the wide receiver room, and of course Allen Lazard returning. You have Malachi Corley, the 3rd-round pick from last year as well. I mean, it's one of those things where it just remains to be seen. O-line's a bit of a concern for me overall, too. Like I said, 40 sacks last season. Now, yes, you go and you get Armand Membu, and hopefully you can just leave Olu Fashanu at the left tackle spot and let him play there and not have to move him around. He did have to bounce around between right tackle. He played right guard for a game and then ultimately finished the year at left tackle before finishing the season with plantar fasciitis. So, question marks there. How's he gonna do coming out of the gate this year? Is that going to be a lingering issue by any means? Just a lot of question marks to sum things up. Like, there's a lot that I'm actually intrigued about with this offense, and I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm writing them off completely, like they can't be good. It's just I feel like at every turn I make when I'm looking at this team, I go, all right, but here's a question. All right, but here's a question. What about this? What about that? What about that? So it's one of those things where too much unknown for me, hence why I have them sitting at the number 4 spot. But this is definitely one of the most, and this goes beyond the AFC East here, this is one of the most intriguing offenses to me in the NFL because I genuinely am unsure of what we're going to get. But I was somebody who was really enjoying Justin Fields last year before he ultimately got the rug pulled out from underneath him because the Steelers were ready to bring Russell Wilson back from his calf injury. It was always Russell Wilson's job. I get that in hindsight, but I really liked what we were getting from Justin Fields. If he can just protect the football and he's not dropping the football onto the ground, this could be a really good offense. It's just a matter of I need to see the proof in the pudding. Moving into the number 3 spot, and like I said, I juggled number 4 and number 3 a bit, but I do think there is a little bit more stability on the number 3 team's end, and that is going to be the New England Patriots, who honestly, once I finally settled on them being number 3, I did have some back and forth between them and number 2 as well. This one was, honestly, it ended up being a little bit more closer than not overall, but just a little bit more. I spent more time thinking about it than I thought I was going to, is probably the best way that I can put that simply. This is an offense, though, that just has so much turnover and so many new faces. So again, this, like I said with the Jets, there is a lot of unknown involved here as well. You have a completely revamped offense with offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels coming in, and of course the skill players, the offensive line. And this is kind of an issue, not an issue, but just a concern that I had with the Washington Commanders last year. So much turnover, so much uncertainty. You don't necessarily know what you are going to get out of all these new faces in a new place like this. So it's one of those things where it can go one of two ways. It's a complete disaster, similar to like when the Patriots brought in Bill O'Brien and they thought that would fix their offensive woes. Or it could go the route of the Washington Commanders. Improvement, steps forward. This offense looks functional and actually looks like a threatening unit to go up against. Now, the big thing, though, is you have a lot of guys in a lot of key places, and you have to see them step up and, of course, compete at that highest of levels. Now, Drake May, obviously being the quarterback, I feel really good about him. I will say that I'm a little bit more cautiously optimistic than some people in the New England area seem to be. For those of you who aren't aware, I work within New England sports media, and there are a lot of people that talk about when Drake May gets that next big contract, and he is the franchise guy that he proved that last year. I'd pump the brakes on that a little bit. I'm excited to see what Drake May does in year number 2, especially with a competent coaching staff and a roster that looks better on paper on the offensive side of the ball at the very least. So I'm excited, don't get me wrong, but I would slow down just a little bit because it's not like he had some monster rookie campaign. And while you can sit here and go, well, if Drake is going to be the franchise guy, logically he should take that next step in his sophomore year. There is such thing as a sophomore slump as well for quarterbacks, and we've seen it happen plenty of times. Some really good quarterbacks as well. It's just one of those things where I at least know that Drake May looked good in opportunities last year. I'm excited to see him in a better situation. Then, of course, you have Will Campbell coming in at left tackle. He is going to play left tackle. That is where all signs are pointing to right now. Arm length, wingspan be damned. He is going to be protecting the blind side of Drake May. I like the energy he brings. I like the game that he brings. This is just a Southern country boy from down south LSU that is coming in, and he's going to whoop some ass if he can. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. And I'm kind of in his camp because there was a lot of naysaying going around, and just a lot. It felt like, I talked about this after Tatoria McMillan's pro day a month or two ago, whenever that was that actually happened, where it felt like people were purposely trying to sabotage his stock to get him to drop further, whereas Tet McMillan ends up going number 8. Probably the best wide receiver in this draft, if you depending on whether you count Travis Hunter as a wide receiver or not, I guess is the way you'd look at that. But like, he was one of the de facto top guys, depending on who you asked. A lot of people seem to think that way. If you liked Matthew Golden more or another guy, totally fair. But a lot of people looked at Tet McMillan as one of the top guys at the very least. So with that in mind, I felt like after his pro day, there were people trying to make him sound like he was far slower than he actually was. There was so much ambiguity around just the times coming out from his 40. And I feel like a similar thing kind of happened with Will Campbell. The amount of questioning that went on and on and on about his arm length and his wingspan, and is he going to be able to play left tackle at the NFL because he won't get to the point of attack first against defensive ends or just pass rushers as a whole. It was one of those things that by the time the draft rolled around, I was so sick and tired of listening to, because he looks like a great football player. He looks great as a left tackle playing in the SEC against some of the best competition in college football, against guys that he's going to probably continue to see on Sundays in the NFL. I'm ready to see him start things up at left tackle, and my hope is that he winds up protecting Drake May's blind side for the next 10 plus years, and I really hope he does it at a high level. Then, of course, Stephon Diggs, you have the impact and recovery timetable of that ACL injury. He looks good from what he's been posting. The guy, and even people within the building of New England now are starting to, it feels like there's a buzz growing. Like Stephon Diggs, for where he is in his recovery timetable, looks unbelievable with the speed that he's working at here. You got questions in the running back room. How does Ramondre Stevenson react to Travion Henderson's drafting, and what does that running back rotation look like there? Henderson right now, you probably assume is RB2 to Ramondre Stevenson's 1, but if fumble issues pop up again, Henderson could end up being the guy going forward. There's a lot to look at here with the Patriots. I will say this, though. I expect them to be better this year. Coaching is going to be huge. Mike Vrabel has put together competent playoff winning teams in the NFL, and that is a piece of why, with so many questions here in New England and with New York as well, why I ended up edging them out a little bit over the New York Jets here, just because I have yet to see what Aaron Glenn and his staff can actually do in New York, whereas I at least kind of know what to expect with the New England Patriots and what Mike Vrabel did with the Tennessee Titans. So hence why I'll settle with them at number 3 for right now. I'm really looking forward to seeing this team, and it very well should take a step forward after what was a disaster last season in New England. Moving into number 2, and again, this was a tight one here. I was close to dropping them to number 3 and swapping the Patriots into number 2, but we have ourselves the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is an interesting group that injuries ended up kind of like tearing this team apart, it felt like last year, at least on the offensive side of the football, whether it was along the offensive line, in the wide receiver room with people missing time, of course, Tua missing extensive time as well. This is a team that, depending on how healthy this roster stays, will ultimately determine the success of this offense overall. Because on paper, this is the most explosive offense in the AFC East. On paper, you have, of course, Jalen Waddle. You have Tyreek Hill. Malik Washington proved to be a pretty solid number 3 with them last year. And, of course, you bring in Nick Westbrook-Akine, who caught, I think it was 9 touchdowns last season in Tennessee. Big-bodied red zone guy, great for Tua. But then you also have question marks surrounding the O-line that did see a little bit of work done to it this offseason. The drafting of Jonah Savanaia in the second round. You, of course, have James Daniels as well. I would assume both those guys are plugging into their respective guard spots. Jonah Savanaia, he was, depending on who you talk to, tackle, guard kind of prospect, but a lot of people thought he translates more guard than tackle, so it seems like he'll probably go guard. And then, of course, Patrick Paul, who stepped in for Teron Armstead last year, looks like he'll hold down the left tackle spot, as Armstead is obviously done. So it's one of those things where health is probably the biggest key here, because I look at this team, Devon Achane, home run hitter, and like I said, the wide receivers there, Jonnu Smith looked unbelievable in this offense last year. There's so much to like about what we're getting here, and like I don't have any actual issue with this team on paper besides the big health question mark. And that's always one of those things where teams get bit by the bug, and sometimes it won't let go. I'm hoping that they've gotten rid of it and that they're good to go, because this is an exciting group. And then one little thing I just wanted to point out here that I'm really interested in seeing, because the offense didn't really get a ton of love in the draft, and honestly, not too much being brought in as far as free agency as well. Like we mentioned, like Westbrook-Akine and James Daniels on the O-line, but I mean, you have Larry Borum at right tackle, Farrell Brown as well. The tight end was brought in, Alexander Madison, which he's not going to be, not a massive playmaker, but you have 2 names on this roster that I'll be interested in seeing. Quinn Ewers, I don't really expect him to be battling snaps with Tua, or battling 4 snaps with Tua anytime soon. Of course, you have Zach Wilson there as well, but I'm really just interested in seeing how Quinn Ewers looks during this rookie mini camp, during training camp, going through the preseason if he gets the opportunity to play, because that's somebody, just coming out of high school, was highly touted, highly regarded, and obviously his collegiate career didn't necessarily finish off the way he would have liked. So I'll be interested to just see how he looks, but I've got to say, Ollie Gordon is probably one of my favorite late round draft picks for any team, if there was a place that you could possibly send this guy, who obviously last season production kind of fell off a cliff, but when you look back to his 2023 season with 1,700 yards, 21 touchdowns, one of the best running backs in the nation, All-American, I believe he finished 7th in Heisman voting. That's a guy that if I had to pick an offense to plug him into to maybe rebound his career and put it back in the right trajectory, Miami would be that place. Mike McDaniel loves to run the ball. He knows how to scheme people up. And yes, you have Devon Achane. I would say maybe a little bit of uncertainty behind him as to who's going to be the number 2, 3, who's going to pop in where. Ollie Gordon could be a guy who winds up making some noise in Miami. Like, that's like best situation for that guy. So I'm really excited to see what he could potentially do over there. But Miami Dolphins sitting at the number 2 spot, which of course puts the Buffalo Bills at the tippity top of the AFC East. Listen, this is something that didn't see a ton of investment this offseason. I mean, you bring in Joshua Palmer. Exciting stuff, a good addition to the wide receiver room. We'll see what he does there. Always been serviceable, never necessarily much more than like your number 3 wide receiver, something along those lines. You also have the addition of Elijah Moore as well. So I would say that the wide receiver room is maybe a little bit deeper at this point. You also drafted at Caden Prather in the 7th round. So you have some interesting faces to look at. You, of course, bring in Kendrick Green on the offensive line, a couple more late round selections at tackle and tight end with Chase Lunt and Jackson Hawes. But I mean, you're not really looking at a very different offense coming into 2025. And the way I see it, that's okay. It really is. Because you look at this team finishing 2nd in points per game last season. They were 6th in yards per play. This is an offense that does not necessarily need a ton of investment. It was the defense that needed the investment, and it saw that investment with money spent, re-signing, additions on the defense altogether, whether it was through the draft as well. This offense is really going to be predicated on how much progression you see from some of your skilled guys. Now, you look at the wide receiver room, like we were just talking about a second ago, Joshua Palmer obviously being a nice addition there, but I'm looking at Keon Coleman and I'm looking at Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman had a nice, serviceable rookie season. I wouldn't say it was bad. I wouldn't say it was good. I would say it was solid. You're looking at 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, solid rookie campaign for him, but you'd like to see a little bit more considering where he was drafted from for the Bills. But then you also have Khalil Shakir, who unbelievable start to last season, had the crazy catch streak going on. I mean, it felt like this guy could do no wrong and could not drop a football at the beginning of last season, for honestly through the middle part of the entirety of last season, it felt like. I mean, it's really just going to come down to progression. Can Khalil Shakir solidify himself as like a legit number 1, or if not, is he that, inside slot guy for you? However you need to line him up, can he emerge beyond what we got from him last year? And then, of course, Keon Coleman, can he become that number 1 guy? I feel like depending on the next step that those two guys can take, that this offense should be elevated forward a little bit more. And I think Joshua Palmer adds to the wide receiver room, so it should be a solid trio to work with. But then I'm also looking at James Cook in the tight end room as well. You, of course, have Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. I think with Kincaid being a first-round selection in 2023, you want him to really become that number 1 guy. Like, the fact that he and Dawson Knox are still kind of battling for that number 1 tight end spot, I think at this point you were probably hoping Dalton Kincaid really took over and really started to run away with that battle here. So I think you're hoping he can maybe, with all that athleticism he has, the size and the speed and the ability to catch the football, you're hoping he takes off. But then James Cook, this is something that I really hope holding out does not end up causing them issues, because right now, and rightfully so after the way he played last season, he wants a new contract. He wants to make his fair share of the money, and I completely understand that. And at this point now, I think he's earned a decent bag, if you ask me, with the production he had last season and just how much he meant for the offense in key spots in big situations. This is a guy that I definitely think deserves the money. It sounds like there's a little bit of a standoff between Buffalo and James Cook, and I don't know. I mean, I think I saw something about Dalvin Cook requesting $20 million per year. I don't know why Dalvin's stepping into the conversation other than their brothers, but it's one of those things where I feel like we're not going to see a split between these two. Buffalo, for the last, basically for like what feels like all of Josh Allen's career, if we're going to be completely honest here, Josh Allen has desperately needed like a legitimate running game that can back him up. So he can put on the Superman cape come playoff time or in those really big games against those other top AFC contending teams. He could put on the cape and do his thing. Whereas prior to James Cook's emergence, it felt like Josh Allen had to put the cape on each and every single game. You want him to only have to do it when it's absolutely necessary, and I feel like James Cook has allowed that with really opening up the running game. Like, we were looking at seasons where Josh Allen was literally the leading rusher as far as yards and touchdowns were concerned for this offense here. I don't think that's sustainable in the long run. You want Josh Allen to play quarterback, be able to move around in the pocket if need be, but you don't want him to have to be bulldozing and running the way he does constantly. You want it to be a happy medium, a healthy dose of this and a healthy dose of that. So with James Cook looking the way he does, I don't think Buffalo ends up fumbling this here and we don't see James Cook in a Bills uniform next season. I think he'll be around for the long run. It's just a matter of getting the numbers right here. But my concern really is just the holdout. I hope it doesn't affect him in any way, because we have seen it happen before where guys have a really strong season. They're looking for the contract. They hold out during camp. They're not coming to the facilities. They're doing stuff on their own. But unfortunately, football conditioning is a little bit different than regular conditioning, and it always takes a little bit to get back in the thick of things. And the last thing you want is James Cook coming out with a slow start, and he's not really catching his stride till like week 6 of the season. So I just hope that doesn't hold them back, because on paper, listen, the way Josh Allen plays, I would say you probably give more talent to Miami overall, but Josh Allen is in a league above the rest of the quarterbacks here, and by a bit of a margin, I would say. As far as the AFC East is concerned, he puts this entire Bills offense well above everybody else in the AFC East until I'm proven otherwise. So give me the Bills at number 1 to round out the top. But those are my rankings for the AFC East offenses. We'll do defenses a little bit down the road here. But again, comment down below. Let me hear from y'all. Thoughts, opinions. Am I right? Am I wrong? All that and more. Fire away in that comment section. But as always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.